SpongeBob SquarePants. Early Chapter Book 4. Once Upon a SpongeBob. By James Gelsey. Illustrated by Heather Martinez. Read for you by Eric Schuster. Chapter 1. Read any good books lately? SpongeBob SquarePants was walking to work one day when something hit him on the head.
"Hey, what's the big idea?"
SpongeBob cried, looking around.
"What have we here?"
SpongeBob said. He picked up a book from the ground and read the title.
Mother Grouper's Fairy Tales. Oh, I used to love these stories when I was little.
SpongeBob began to read. He kept reading all the way to work at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob read the entire day at work. He didn't stop reading when he got home.
Wow, Gary, these fairy tales are even better than I remembered,
SpongeBob exclaimed through a mouthful of snail food. Finally, it was time for bed.
Gee, Gary, wouldn't it be great to live in a real fairy tale world?
SpongeBob dreamily asked his pet.
But I know it could never happen, not in a million years.
Chapter 2. SpongeBob and the Kelp Stalk. The next morning, SpongeBob awoke to the sound of Mrs. Puff calling him. "SpongeBob!" she shouted. "Come here this instant!" SpongeBob stumbled into the kitchen.
"Mrs. Puff?"
he cried.
"What are you doing here?"
"You mean you don't recognize your own mother?"
Mrs. Puff said in surprise.
"Poor boy, I guess not eating for 2 days has affected your memory. SpongeBob, I want you to trade Gary for some food for us,"
Mrs. Puff continued.
"Trade Gary?"
SpongeBob exclaimed.
"Never! I wouldn't trade Gary for all the magic kelp in the sea."
SpongeBob ran out of the house carrying Gary under his arm.
"Psst! Over here!"
whispered a familiar voice. SpongeBob stared as Squidward tentacles held out a mysterious glowing bag.
"What's that?"
asked SpongeBob, entranced.
"All the magic kelp in the sea,"
Squidward answered.
"How about a trade for that snail of yours? I'll even throw in this special bag."
"Sold!"
SpongeBob said. Mrs. Puff was furious when SpongeBob told her what had happened. She tossed the bag out the window. As soon as the bag hit the ground, a giant kelp stalk sprouted and grew higher than SpongeBob could see.
"What could be up there?"
SpongeBob wondered. SpongeBob climbed the kelp stalk to the very top. He saw a huge castle in the distance.
"I can't wait to see what's inside,"
SpongeBob shouted as he ran toward the castle. Chapter 3. The Golden Jellyfish. SpongeBob walked up to the enormous front door and slipped into the castle. Inside, Patrick Star sat in a chair, happily eating jellyfish jelly. Next to him was a beautiful jellyfish.
"Is that the jellyfish that makes the golden jelly?"
asked SpongeBob in disbelief.
"It sure is,"
Patrick answered.
"I haven't eaten in almost 3 days. I'll bet that stuff tastes good,"
SpongeBob hinted.
"It's delicious,"
Patrick said, ignoring SpongeBob's hunger.
Do you think anyone would mind if I borrowed that jellyfish for a little while?
SpongeBob hinted again.
Nah, Patrick said. Well, maybe the giant.
Giant? What giant?
Asked SpongeBob. Suddenly, the door slammed open.
That one,
Patrick said, pointing.
Fee-fi-fo-funge! I smell the breath of a square-pantsed sponge!
Shouted the giant. His thunderous steps shook the room.
Whoa!
Cried SpongeBob.
Save me!
Chapter 4. Spongerella.
Whoa!
Cried SpongeBob as he awoke.
Save me!
SpongeBob looked around and saw that he was in his bed.
Wow, Gary, what a dream!
He said.
SpongeBob,
Shouted Squidward, barging into the room.
what are you still doing in bed? Sandy's fancy party is in 2 hours, and you've got a list of chores as long as my tentacles.
Sandy's having a party?
SpongeBob cheered, jumping out of bed.
Let's go!
You're not going anywhere until you finish your chores,
Squidward said.
What kind of chores?
Asked SpongeBob. Squidward put SpongeBob to work, helping him get ready for the party.
I can't wait to go to Sandy's party,
SpongeBob said when he finished.
You can't go to Sandy's fancy party,
Squidward said.
You don't have a fancy bone in your body. In fact, you don't have any bones in your body. Have a nice night, SpongeBob Unfancy Pants,
Squidward mocked, and he left SpongeBob all alone.
Gee, Gary, I really wish I could go to Sandy's party,
SpongeBob said sadly. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and a strange-looking character appeared.
Never fear,
Came a deep, gravelly voice.
your fairy krabmother is here.
Chapter 5. Abracacabra. The fairy krabmother led SpongeBob outside.
Now, let's make this the fanciest night of your life,
The fairy krabmother said. The fairy krabmother turned a Krabby Patty into a coach and hitched a team of jellyfish to the front to pull it. Patrick saw the magic and quickly ran over.
Turn me into something,
He begged.
come on, please.
The fairy krabmother waved her magic wand and poof!
Whee! I'm an umbrella!
Patrick sang.
Now, let's do something about those rags,
The fairy krabmother said to SpongeBob.
Now remember, the magic wears off at midnight, B-boy.
The fairy krabmother warned.
Thanks, Fairy Krabmother.
SpongeBob said. He jumped into the coach and sped off to the party. Chapter 6. A Kickin' Good Time. SpongeBob arrived at the Tree Dome for Sandy Cheek's fancy party. He immediately caught Sandy's attention.
You're looking pretty fancy.
She told SpongeBob.
How about a turn around the dance floor?
Sandy pulled him onto the dance floor. Together, they karate danced all night.
Say, you're the best karate dancer I've ever seen,
Sandy gushed.
What's your name?
Before SpongeBob could answer, the clock began striking midnight.
Sorry, gotta go,
He yelped. He raced from the tree dome but dropped something along the way. Sandy looked down.
I must find the stranger who fits in these pants, she declared.
Sandy searched all of Bikini Bottom, but couldn't find the pants' rightful owner. Finally, she ended up at SpongeBob's house. Sandy called SpongeBob outside. He quickly put on the square pants.
A perfect fit! You're the one!
Sandy exclaimed as she karate danced toward him.
Hee-yah!
Chapter 7. The Krabby Patty Man.
Hee-yah!
SpongeBob awoke with a start.
Wow, Gary, what a dream within a dream,
he said.
Meow,
Gary said.
What do you mean I look different?
SpongeBob asked. SpongeBob looked at himself in the mirror.
Whoa!
He shrieked.
I'm not SpongeBob anymore. I'm Krabby Patty Bob. And this isn't my bed. It's a griddle.
SpongeBob jumped off the griddle, but Mr. Krabs blocked the way.
And where do you think you're going, me little Krabby Patty?
asked Mr. Krabs. Krabby Patty Bob ducked between Mr. Krabs' legs and took off.
Come back here,
Mr. Krabs yelled, chasing after him.
Run, run, run as fast as you can,
Krabby Patty Bob called back.
You can't catch me. I'm the Krabby Patty Man.
Outside, Krabby Patty Bob was quickly surrounded by a hungry mob.
What's cooking, everybody?
He asked nervously.
You are, Krabby Patty Bob,
Sandy answered.
But you wouldn't eat me like this, would you?
Stammered Krabby Patty Bob.
Nah, of course not,
reassured Sandy.
First, we'd have to get some fries and a drink. Help!
cried Krabby Patty Bob. Chapter 8. Happily Ever After. Just then, Patrick jumped out to protect Krabby Patty Bob from the threatening crowd.
Stop!
Patrick shouted.
Has not a Krabby Patty feelings? If you prick him with a fork, will not his delicious juices escape and make your fries all soggy?
I hate when that happens,
said someone in the crowd.
Me too,
agreed another. The crowd wandered away, leaving Patrick and Krabby Patty Bob all alone.
Phew!
Krabby Patty Bob said with a sigh as they walked home.
Thanks, Patrick. You really saved my buns back there.
Don't mention it, Krabby Patty Bob,
Patrick said.
If there's ever anything I can do for you, just name it,
Krabby Patty Bob said.
Anything?
asked Patrick. Patrick grabbed Krabby Patty Bob's arm.
Then how about a teensy-weensy taste?
He asked.
You look and smell so yummy.
Patrick, no!
cried Krabby Patty Bob.
No!
SpongeBob woke up screaming. He looked around and realized that he was in his bed.
Wow, Gary! What a dream within a dream within a dream!
He said.
Those fairy tales sure seemed real.
Then SpongeBob noticed Patrick standing beside his bed.
Patrick, what are you doing here?
asked SpongeBob.
I just came by for some breakfast,
Patrick said. He gave SpongeBob's arm a little lick.
Got any tartar sauce?
The end. We hope you have enjoyed this reading of SpongeBob SquarePants, Early Chapter Book 4. Once Upon a SpongeBob by James Gelsey, illustrated by Heather Martinez, read for you by Eric Schuster.